I mean, we trained for a lot of the same stuff as the audience would have seen in the third one, but on this particular one, we wanted to up the ante a little bit. If number 3, let's say number 3 was level 8, this is level 12, because we wanted to show a lot more control on the dog, a lot more character moments for the dog before he explodes into his violence. So there's a lot more beats that the audience will get to hopefully identify with the dog and just get a chance to look at him and understand, you know, what his thoughts are before boom, boom, boom happens. Belgian Malinois for us, he's just like 100% on the whole time. He never gets tired, he never turns off. You can do very calm stuff with him, but obviously the explosive action stunt stuff is what he specializes in, is what people want to see. And they're just like 100% all the time. They never refuse, they never want to give up. And they have 2 nicknames. One is the alligator, because these dogs like to bite when they're working, not just random people, but they like to do the stunt work. And they also call them the Velcro dog, because when they're bonded to you, they're like really 100% stuck to your side. So for us in this type of setting, it's the ultimate dog. Everything with the actors, it's the same as when we start with the stunt guys. It starts with, very what we call doggy basic school. So the dog's around, here's the stunt guy's voice. We start the dog working beside them. We start the stunt guys doing some falling stuff or acting stuff beside the dog. And then we slowly integrate the 2 together. Yeah, Shamir Anderson from Toronto. I actually worked with him in Canada with my wolves way back when he was on Winona Earp. So I knew him back from then, and then when he came here, we started working with him in Germany. We were hoping to have him a lot longer than we did, but with schedules and what have you, and COVID restrictions and everything else, we didn't get as much time with us as we wanted, which somewhat helped us a little bit, because the director didn't want a buddy-buddy relationship. He wanted the dog and the character, the tracker character, to have a relationship, but not like Turner and Hooch. It wasn't buddy like that. And also one of the key things for this movie was the dog and the tracker get separated a lot. So there's lots of times for the dog to shine and a lot of time for the tracker to shine. And then they'll meet up and they'll separate and they'll meet up. So we spent a lot of time with Shamir just on the very basics. He obviously doesn't take any stunt work, he doesn't anything like that. But the one dog in particular who we used for the key one is Britta, and he formed a pretty tight relationship with her.
I think John Wick 4 is now a big tentpole epic film that has huge sets and vistas, and every decision we make on this film is the dream of sitting in a theater and watching it on a big screen. And I think that, we could put aside what's going to happen with, just where we are going to be as a society in terms of communal experiences and stuff. I desperately miss the movies. And I miss all kinds of movies, but I definitely miss that movie that you wait in line for, you get your popcorn, the theater's packed, you feel the energy, and then it's literally as soon as a character comes on the screen, people clap because they're just happy to see that character again. That's John Wick 4. On the first film from the fourth film, when audiences watch the action, they laugh. And they're not laughing because they're laughing at it. It's just like they're laughing because it's a ride. It's a thrill. And that, to me, is why I think people want to go back to the movies, to get that collective thrill. And that's what we're going for. It all starts with Keanu. I think people love the first John Wick movie, but one of the reasons why I think it had such an impact was it was kind of a reintroduction. It was a reminder to the audience of why Keanu was such a great movie star and a great action star. And people fell in love with him again, a whole new generation did. And it also coincided with all these, Keanu's a great guy, memes and stories. It was all true. He's one of the all-time good dudes. And so people were like rooting for Keanu and they were rooting for John Wick because he was such an underdog character. And so I think really the entry point into the franchise is Keanu and then the John Wick character. It's crazy to see because, when we hired Chad and Dave, they were really well-established second unit guys and stunt coordinators. Nobody from that world got shots over the course of the decades. I mean, there were exceptions here or there, but most of the time you saw writers make the transition, or DPs, or even some editors, but you never saw that from that world. And their command of what the movie should be and how they presented it, and the fact that Keanu, right off the bat, just trusted him so much was why we hired him in the first place. But what I've seen from Chad over the years is he's gotten his confidence up. He's realizing that he's evolved from, oh wow, that's the ex-second unit guy, stunt double of Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, to arguably, I think, the best action director in Hollywood in the last 15, 20 years. Hiro is one of Keanu's favorite actors. Now, Hiro is, the Japanese Clint Eastwood. There are certain actors where it's just their delivery and their face. They just carry weight. They carry wisdom. They carry integrity. They take up a lot of the screen just because of their presence, and that's Hiro. And there are scenes in this film with Hiro that are as cool as any action we've had in any of the John Wick movies. And there's a scene where he's in the kitchen and they just hand him a gun and hand him a sword. And he goes, let's go. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is John Wick. Samurai sword in one hand, gun in the other, with a bunch of sumo wrestlers about to fight Donnie Yen. I'm like, come on. I'm in heaven. And so, and that's the other thing too, we wanted a Japanese actor that can go toe-to-toe with Donnie. What we love about Bill is, again, we were talking about that a lot of our villains, or a lot of our characters, are on the older side. There are ones that have gone through and grizzled veterans. And we made a conscious decision to bring some youth in, not because we were trying to play to the audience, but just to see the contrast between the old guns and the new guns. And for the Marquis, who we needed to be one of the most loathsome characters in all 4 movies, someone to be hated so much, we wanted to go with youthful punk. And we wanted also go with that great face that is able to express kind of a fake, again, formalism that we have, and a politeness. And in Bill's, the contrast he has with Ian McShane and with Lance Reddick, you're just gonna hate him. And we wanted that kind of, bad guys could look like Michael Nyquist, just beat up and bad guys could look, like, a 6'5" bruiser, or bad guys could look like Bill's character, the Marquis, who are clean cut and were mannered, classy, but in some ways those are the ones you hate the most. Before COVID, you would sit down and meet 10 actors or actresses and get a sense and a vibe, and now a lot of the stuff is not only on Zoom, but it's like sometimes from another country. And so, we saw a bunch of these audition tapes to play for Akira, and Rina's was great. But it was one of those classic moments where as soon as the camera was on her and she was in her wardrobe and she was in a scene with Hiro and she kind of incorporated the world into who she was, the John Wick world, because it's not easy for a lot of people to show up there. They're like, what the hell is this? And watching the footage with her, I was like, oh my God, she's incredible. You can't take your eyes off her. I knew her as a singer. I knew her as an interesting look. I knew her as a promising actress, but she holds the screen in a big way. And my gut is we'll be seeing more of her character in other films. On an action side, I mean, Donnie, I remember the first action set piece I saw on dailies. He punched so fast that I called Chad, and I'm like, how do you speed up the dailies? He goes, what are you talking about? That's just his natural speed. I've never seen anything like it. Performance in film isn't just like, great dialogue and words and facial. Performance is a physicality too, and I don't think I've ever seen a more gifted physical performer on a film that I made than Donnie. And you really don't understand just how good he is until you've seen the dailies and you see how those scenes and these action scenes are placed together and are built, and he does everything, and it's him to such great detail and such great ferocity. He is a genius when it comes to fighting.
I was a huge fan of the franchise. I think they're really fun. I think Chad is one of the best action directors out there. I've met him a few times before, and then he approached me with this thing, and I said, oh, yeah. The way Chad described him to me is he's sort of the new sheriff in town. I'm not quite sure exactly how the table works and the structure of it, and it's purposefully kept a bit of a secret and a mystery in the world of John Wick. But he's appointed at a high position to, surprise, surprise, track down and kill John Wick. And he's kind of been elevated to this position, and he's off his leash, which means that he could basically implement whatever he wants and whatever he thinks is necessary to get it done. That's been incredible. I mean, I don't think I've ever worked on a production before where I've been in these opulent, over-the-top, exclusive locations. I mean, we've been shooting in Paris, and I've gotten to shoot at the Versailles stables that they shut down for us, the Opera House that they shut down, which supposedly is the most expensive location in all of Paris, so check. And then the Louvre, they shut down the Louvre, which was amazing. Working with Ian has been a bit of a high point for me in this job. I mean, I was such a huge fan of his before, obviously. He's a legend and just such a fun guy, too. Just like hearing stories about, what he was up to in the 60s. And the people that he met in the industry at that time. It's like, I don't know, you don't meet a lot of people like him. He plays the tracker, and he's in it for the money. He tracks down people of interest and reports their locations, and the Marquis finds a use for him. There's a bit of a Western flair to his outfit, sort of like mid to late 1800s cut of the suits. Paco is obviously an amazing costume designer, and I think he had a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of black suits with black ties in this franchise, and the Marquis gives it a little bit more of a sparkle, I guess. Every location, there's a different suit, different color, and it's glitter and gold, so what's not to like about it? He's Keanu Reeves. Like, I grew up with the Matrix franchise and, been a big fan of his ever since I was a kid. And he really cares. I really like him and his approach. And he's like a true cinephile, He knows movies. He knows exactly how he wants a scene to be shot. And then he's a very generous director. He kind of lets you play around with it. And if you're going out too far, if he comes and steers you the right way, and yeah, but predominantly, I mean, mainly gives you a lot of freedom to explore the scenes.
I'd say first and foremost, I love working with Keanu Reeves. I think he's one of the best creative, collaborative partners I could have ever wanted, let alone imagined. Keanu and I, every time, say, no, this is our last one, we're not going to do it again, we'll see what happens. Then we go on a press tour. It seems like every time at the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, we'll sit around having a few drinks in their Scotch bar. And we're like, ooh, that was a good one, good thing, glad it's done, yeah, great. I got an idea. And it starts that way, and it starts with an idea on a napkin. And I honestly, at the end of it, like the world. John Wick has elements of things in it that I grew up watching. It has a sensibility of a Western, of a samurai movie, of a wuxia kung fu film. It has an underworld side. It has mythology. It's got car chases, Like, what other franchise can you put 70s styles car chases, attack dogs, samurais, ninja? I don't know. So it didn't exist, and then we got to make it exist. I don't even know if I'd call it a collaboration. Yes, we collaborate, but I just think you have two people that are working together that love the same stuff. What's the Bob Fosse quote? Half of directing is coming up with really crazy ideas, and the other 50% is finding people crazy enough to pull them off. It starts with Keanu. And I think that's the main thing, is we trust each other enough to step off the cliff together. What happens after that, I don't know. I try to rip off from the best. Let's start with that. You try to rip something off. You're trying to go, this guy idea, I'm gonna make good, the bad, the ugly, and then it starts morphing. And if you give the idea enough room and enough slack, it starts morphing and morphing and morphing and morphing. The trick is not to try and put a suit on that doesn't fit. So there's a lot of things that, boy, I would have loved to steal from Sergio Leone and Wong Kar-wai and Tarantino and Kurosawa and all this stuff, but it doesn't really fit. You start there and you go, what I love about it, oh my God, that's genius. Then you start realizing, well, the genius is, not just original thought, but it's original application of thought and how you do, and you start letting it loose, and you start letting go a little bit, and you start experiencing things in your character, and you start living back in your world and seeing what fits and what doesn't. Perspective, really. Three people, part of the same problem and the same solution. Everybody wants the gold. The gold is the thing. One guy wants it for this reason, one guy wants it for this reason, one guy wants it for this. How do we make that more fun? How do we make that more wiki, and how do we do that? Okay, well, let's make John Wick the gold, and let's put a dilemma on that. Because in Leone's, if any one of the three gets the gold, they get it. The other two have nothing. It doesn't affect, they just didn't get it. Okay, bummer, they're just the same. Ours was, okay, well, if any one doesn't get to this one moment, everybody loses. They were all three different people all going, and they all had a point, so that's fun about, and that fits into our Wiccan world where there are no good guys, period. There's just better bad guys. Wick is not a technically good guy. He's an assassin. He's living in this world. He just happens to have a code in this world that we feel attracted to. So doing that structure of good, the bad, the ugly with different perspectives, and you add in, the character of the Marquis, Bill Skarsgard's character, who literally is the only person doing the right thing. It's kind of fun. My version was more like Zatoichi. You buy him blind, stumbling masseuse guy, that kind of guy. And after my first creative talk with Donnie, it was like, oh, I don't want to play him like that. I want to be way cooler, and So I was like, okay, well, I wonder how I'm going to figure this out. And Donnie came at it very hard. Look, man, I love your series. I love John Wick. I can't think of anything I'd rather do. But I for myself, I got to do something different. I want to add, I want to go to the extremes in this. And he actually brought up more of the John Wick than I did. He broke stereotype in our world, going, I want to be more. I want to do more. Why can't I be the cool guy that did this, that does this, but I'm going to have it? And you're like, oh my God, that's so much better than what I was thinking of. So that kind of changed just from a Zatoichi replica to a whole new character that went well beyond anything I had planned. No matter how cool we are and how old we get, we're all competitive, and you all want to see who's full of shit and not. And Donnie is definitely not full of shit. He is phenomenal. He's fucking amazing, an amazing athlete. Amazing. I can't even say, I've met so many amazing people in my life, but the speed at which Donnie can move, memorize, and creatively feel things out, he knows him very well. Our best choreography team can only enhance him, but they're not gonna, he's already better than 99% of choreographers and stunt performers I know. Literally that good. I've met Bill. I've talked with Bill for years now. I met him originally way back when my old partner Dave Leitch had used him on Atomic Blonde. Had briefly spoken to him and been a big fan of his whole career. I've been dying to work with him. Thought I was going to do it for a part that is no longer in the movie. We had written a part I thought he'd be great for. So I sent him the script, and he came back, and he's like, no, I want to be that guy. I'm like, you want to be the bad guy? He's like, yeah, that's where all the fun is. I'm like, I could be so lucky. Literally got him the next day. You can imagine what a bad guy role in a John Wick would be. Like, we all have that stereotype in our head. Older gentleman, white, got the look, and he's got the plot and plan, he's got the scowl or something, like that kind of thing. Or the witty, intelligent, guy that you don't see coming, the jolly guy, Bill went a whole different direction. You go, okay, I'm gonna have this weird French Cajun accent. I'm gonna be, I love fashion and wardrobe and playing with that. So I just knew right off the bat I wanted, a certain type of wardrobe. I know I wanted to change suits every time. I wanted this opulence that is almost comical to a point. And one of the things, Bill had done this GQ photo shoot a while ago when he's in suits, and I was just like, fucking guy can wear a suit. So we're gonna change suits. We're gonna you're just gonna trust me with it. We're gonna do a triple Windsor knot. We're gonna do all this. I'm gonna put silver thread in your clothes. It's gonna kick light. It's gonna be weird. This thing is gonna be, no matter what we do, our whole Greek mythology vibe into John Wick is, whenever I shoot you, you're gonna be the good guy. You're gonna be the guy in light and bright, and Keanu's always gonna be dark and black, and you're gonna be this shining hope. You're gonna be Zeus on Mount Olympus, and Keanu will be down in Hades. I think the trick is Keanu. Keanu and I discussed it ad nauseum many, many times. John Wick doesn't know he's in a movie. John Wick believes he is John Wick. And Keanu puts on the suit, he believes he is that guy. That's the anchor. And the cast follows Keanu. They go, well, if he's taking it serious, I'm gonna take it serious. And then we make fun of ourselves. It's that simple. That's the only true north we stay by. The rest, that goes back to Jump the Shark and all that stuff. Look, if John Wick believes that could happen, it's in the movie.
I adored the first one. I thought the first one was kind of genius. Real good action antidote for what was going around. Yeah. And then the second one was also terrific. It was magnificent. The locations, the story, the sort of how they started to unfold the high table and who they are and the international flavor of it and everything. And of course the action is unmatched. And then the third one, just started spinning out into this kind of crazy universe, and I just enjoyed them. I don't know that you learn anything necessarily about the high table, which is also kind of brilliant. It's just kind of the high table is, that's the entity that sits over everything. Like in the second one, you got an idea that there are people, human beings, that sit on this high table. They're not aliens, they're human beings. You also get the idea that it's very ancient because of the locations that they choose. And then in the third one, you go to the desert and you kind of follow the assassin mythology, and that you get the idea that maybe that guy, the elder, right, sits over the high table, the guy that gets you to dismember yourself. And then this Harbinger character shows up. He's what John Wick is in danger of becoming, a guy that can't get out from under the high table ever. But he's old, he's limps, he's got scars, but he just kind of conducts the business and the rituals of the high table. Yeah, this is an incredible production. You have Chad, who has the vision, and Keanu, who works on that vision with him. And that's the best kind of partnership you can have. This is one of those shows where nothing's impossible. I mean, just nothing's impossible. That every whim and every whim and idea that's a good one will be accomplished. I think what they like about this movie is what they like about all John Wick movies: the simplicity of the story, the action, of course, which is peerless. I've never seen anything like it.
I believe in fate. Destiny, right? That's probably what happened to many of my previous movies. Me and the producer, Basil, we were on the phone. And out of nowhere, right? He said, Donnie, do you watch John Wick? Do you like John Wick? I said, actually, I do, Would you like to be in it? I said, well, it depends, right? Depends on the role and the script. And I read the first draft they originally given to me. It's quite solid. At the same time, there's a lot of potential to be, and I know that we're gonna go through all these kind of creative conversation with Chad and three of us, and which we did. And I was convinced, and I said, all right, I'll do it. I trust you, So got on a plane and went to Germany. I have never met anybody in the film industry, even with my 40 years of working with so many Chinese directors, action directors, right, including, that I can truly say that someone like Chad can understand what I'm trying to express. It's that whole Asian culture and Western culture. Even when I'm back home, when I'm with my most comfortable environment with my colleagues, Asian filmmakers, they don't understand me as much as Chad does. And that's a compliment to him. And I told him that, throughout our dinners. I said, it's very interesting that you understand where I'm coming from. And I understand where he's coming from. Seldom you find that kind of connection. He's human, right? He's complex. He's cool. How many characters you find in English language speaking movies, you find a Asian, they call it minority, even though as a Chinese guy, we are the majority race in the world, that are given the same equality of the diversity of that character. Usually when you see an Asian guy or a Chinese man, you come in, it's like he's either a kung fu master or he's very stoic or conservative. He's very this, right? Not Caine. No, he dresses well, he's expressed himself, he doesn't take any shit, he curses, There's another thing. I said, look, why can't he curse? He got a temper, he got a temperament there. I think they want to create an equal to John in order for a new character having the same kind of weight in the film, especially a new franchise. So you introduce a new character, you got to have a certain substance there. And same type of person, at the same time, they're different, but they understand each other. So there's a connection there. There's a draw between these two characters. I think that's what Chad and wanted to create out of Caine. So when you watch this movie, you see he would just be another character, right? I think it's the people. I think it's Chad. I think he's he's the captain of the ship, It's very important how he makes everybody feel welcome and comfortable. When you're in a comfortable zone, you can be at your best. And that's important for making a great film, especially this film. You're dealing with so many characters from different culture, and they all have this own set of mind, right? Oh, super nice guy, super cool. I actually met him many years ago when I belonged to several of these charity organizations. The organization invited him, and I was the host. He came to Hong Kong, and we had dinner. And of course, our connection through films, he worked with Yuan Ping on The Matrix. And the fact that they told me they watch a lot of my films, it opens you up, to feeling comfortable. But working with Keanu, I know that he's well-trained, he trains a lot, and he has all these experience, and I know that I'm in safe hands. The way I process the style of the fightings in all my movies, I identify this personality first. It's not about the style. People always ask me, what martial arts style you want this? But to me, it doesn't matter, right? To me, it's how this person reacts, how this character reacts. Is he a little bit jumpy? Is he a little bit calm? Is he a little bit for example, this guy, he's family man, introvert, calm, walk slow, talk slow. Therefore, his movements is very reserved. He only reacts to an outside force. So it's always the character. Once I identify the character, it comes natural for me to have these body movements. If I wanted to use an example to explain to people who's fascinated with my films, and I use music, like jazz. How do I explain to you why am I playing this note, this passage? Because it's my feeling. The first week, I was still trying to find this character. Same with Chad. I told Chad, I'm not sure if I know this character yet. And he told me, neither do I. So we both were on the journey of finding this character. And luckily, we started to took shape. Actually, this was an idea that I gave him in the very beginning, because before I came to Berlin, literally, we were exchanging notes, talking to him about this character, this. And he sent me some pictures. What do you think? How does he picture this Caine? And I told him, well, I see him stylish. Steve McQueen, Bruce Lee. And I said, remember Bruce Lee during the black and white interview with the skinny tie and the black suit and everything? Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool, And then we came here, and of course, that was the initial response, but not until when I came and we tried it on, and I showed him, and he said, wow, that's pretty cool. And of course, after he shot the scene and he watched the playback, and until today, and he still say, oh, that's a good decision that we made.
When I first read the first script for John Wick, it was first called Scorn, and I remember thinking that it was a really fun action movie, but what hooked me in was the dog, and I'm a dog lover. And I remember I emailed Basil, and I said, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm really into this. I think it's the dog. It needs a lot of work, but I think that it's like the most sympathetic character. The bones are really great on this. We should figure it out. And then he replied, I agree. And then we optioned the script. We met with Derek, who was the original writer. We actually had a contest with our interns who could pick the best title for the script, because we thought Scorn sounded too much like a horror movie. And I remember Basil just goes, let's just call it John Wick. That's the name of the lead character. The actor will love it. And that actor became Keanu, and we started meeting and talking about directors, and Keanu had known Chad and Dave forever. We'd been aware of them, but we never really met them. We'd never done a movie with 8711, and they came in and they blew us away with their pitch. Their take on the material, their nuance, the story ideas that they had. And so then the team was born, and we were kind of off to the races. The action genre existed, but was sort of, a little bit, I think, perceived down market. And the spin on John Wick was not only putting Keanu at the center of it, an actor that everyone loved, but really telling it a different way. And the aesthetic and the long takes and the gun fu and kind of all the things that make it specific were born. But we really tried to push the envelope with the storytelling and cast great actors. And we keep pushing that further and further. And now on John Wick 4, we've taken it even further. We're sort of, have European vibes. We've left New York. The movie is bigger. The cast is more sprawling. The movie is not just about Keanu anymore. It's a much bigger canvas. So it's been really fun to kind of watch the evolution of that. They've known each other forever, and that deep trust and bond that they have with each other has been there since day one. And I think that has infused itself a lot into the movies. I think that we're super lucky, and because of that bond, it's why Chad is here directing John Wick 4. I think there's very few franchises that sort of have the consistency that we have with this core team of director, star. Keanu loves this franchise so much, and both of them are producers on 4, which is new and something that they've both greatly earned. We had been big fans of Donnie's for a long time. We had actually been developing an English language film for Donnie to star in that was going to shoot earlier this year. And when we were discussing who could play the character of Caine, a blind swordsman, father, brother to Wick, Donnie was the first person that came to mind because he is the perfect foe for him. And also, he's such an incredible martial artist. We thought it would be so cool to have, John Wick versus Ip Man. And Donnie loves the franchise. That's how we sort of got into business with him in the first place. He's a huge fan of the movies, and those always make the best sort of people to put in because they get the joke. They have fun with it. We end up in Paris because John is out for vengeance and really wants to clear his name by, this duel. So one of the initial ideas when we were kind of thinking about what would be in John Wick 4 was this duel. Chad is deeply inspired by Westerns and Japanese films and sort of the idea of making good, the bad, and the ugly. And this duel, this sort of iconic fight, was something that we all pictured and thought would be so incredible to modernize and use Paris as the backdrop. So we have the settings all over, and basically it's, in classic Wick style. Wick is on the run, being hunted and hunting, trying to gain his freedom. We introduced a new character called the Marquis, who is sort of an emissary of the high table and is kind of like the quote-unquote new sheriff in town. And, John has killed the elder and gotten his ring back. And now there's hell to pay. The New York Continental has been destroyed. People have died. There's really nothing left for him. So he is out to destroy the Marquis, played by Bill Skarsgard. And he is here to kill him and destroy everything in its path. And within that, he will be free. Yeah, I think that what I love the most about the Wick worlds too is where you get a taste of John Wick's past. We had a bit of that in John Wick 3 with Angelica Houston, and we dive deeper into the world of the Ruska Roma in the fourth movie. And so he does go back to Berlin and meets Katia and is trying to sort of help get passage back into their good graces to fight on their behalf. And of course, that is met with resistance, but it's always fun to see the sort of Russian roots that he's come from. The sets are incredible. They're big. Everything is huge. We recreated Osaka, Japan on the backlot of Babelsberg. There's bamboo forests, there's shrines, there's water sets, there's dog action, geishas. There's everything in this movie. So I think in a world where people have not been to the movies in a long time, we're really, really pushing for this massive theatrical feeling when you watch John Wick 4. So it's a big movie. We want it to feel big, lots of scale, lots of scope. So not only are the sets incredible, but we're pushing for really iconic locations in Paris, like the Arc de Triomphe and the Louvre, and we really want it to be spectacular. The tracker was born out of the idea of a kind of classic gunslinger that's following Wick, tracking him, out for money. We also wanted to use the dogs again because we love them so much and wanted to figure out how to push what they could do even further, not only with the stunts, but how they could seamlessly fit into the story. So we love this idea of a character that was literally tracking him and could smell him, and was also doing it to raise the bounty and basically just for cash. And he is kind of the mirror of John Wick in a way where he wants to get out. I think he sees what John Wick has become and what Caine has become, and he doesn't want a part of that. So it's really about him kind of getting in, getting out, getting the paycheck, and heading for the hills. Rina has exceeded all expectations. Not only has she been an incredible human to work with and a great addition to the cast, what was really great is that Hiroyuki really took her under his wing. When we showed up, we started doing rehearsals, and the two of them really connected. They're gonna love the action. In this one, there's some incredible car action that is unlike anything we've ever seen. I think they'll love the nunchucks. I think that they'll be surprised at the Scott Adkins fat suit sequence. I think that the visuals are just gonna be incredible. I mean, every day we push it further and further with the sets and the lighting.
Keanu told me that when I worked with him last time in the post-production, and then he told me that I'm gonna make an action movie with Chad. And then, oh, okay, what kind of movie will he make? I was so curious. So I went to the theater, the opening day, and then, wow, good job, Keanu. Believable. It's, of course, fiction, but, after watching the movie, if somebody watching the text or phone, where is the assassin? Like, so matching for the audience is real life. So that's the biggest point, I think. I knew, he'd done a great job for other movies too. And doing the second unit director is the best way to learn how to direct, right? So he got a good steps for a few years. So I didn't surprise. And his success as a director, it's going to be a great model for the next generation. When I received the call from Chad, and I was so happy, always I wanted to work with them again, Chad and Keanu. And especially this time, my role is a kind of best friends for the John Wick. So with this role, I could join this project. Is so happy, like dreams come true. I believe he had no place to go, just he remembered his brotherhood is staying in Osaka. I'm playing Koji Shimazu. He's a manager of Osaka Continental Hotel. And then he grown up with John Wick and Caine, like a brother. They train each other. He was an assassin before, but he has a loyalty for the friendship, or if somebody helped me in the past, I have to return the favor. So very samurai inside in the Shimazu character. Keanu is always quiet and shy, but he's a hard worker. So really matching for the John Wick character. John Wick has a depth. So that's why it's so believable, and then people want to support him. He's done a great job, and of course he researched a lot, and also good balance, mixing between Japanese and Western cultures. So I think this is a good John Wick world. And Shimazu's fighting style is basically the same as John Wick because they grown up together. I had a 3 weeks training before start shooting, but mainly we've done choreograph and then put the idea together. So it's a kind of choreographing, rehearsing.
The biggest challenge of putting the Osaka sequences, the fact that the Japanese team spoke the least amount of English of everybody, but we actually got to spend the most time with them because when we got our feet on the ground here, Koji and his team were already here coming up with ideas. And even when we were in LA, we were sending tapes to Chad, and Koji was sending tapes to Chad. So we were all kind of on the same page by the time we got here. Nunchucks are great because they're easy. Usually you have a stick that you hit somebody with, and now you have 2 sticks that you can hit somebody with, and it kind of just swings, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The hard thing is when you hit somebody with a nunchuck, it bounces back. So getting Keanu to learn what to do with that transfer of energy when it hits, choreography wise, we like to do contact hits when possible, but also a lot of times we can do picture hits. Just that's not really Chad's style. So being able to put in as many contact hits as we can without it whipping back and hitting Keanu, and being able to get him to control the nunchucks was kind of the big deal. And also, he's not just doing nunchucks, he's doing nunchucks and gun at the same time, and then mixing it with jujitsu at the same time. So it was definitely a learning curve, because it's like, how do you put enough nunchucks to make everybody interested and excited, but not too much where it becomes another nunchuck sequence? Working with sumos was great because you don't get to appreciate the power and the magnitude of a sumo fighter until you see them in person. And when they walk into the room, they just fill the space. And you're like, as a fight coordinator, I don't know how I would deal with you as a small person, to be honest. And then they were big teddy bears. They were super sweet to work with. Again, language barrier, so Koji took care of most of that. But when we came in, they were super open to adjustments in terms of camera and choreography, adjusting to help the story and the scene. But they were awesome to work with. They were so cool. $87.11 to me is home first and foremost, but even before I got there, they kind of changed the game in how well or how closely stunt teams work with productions, with directors, and they kind of set that style of showing well-built previses, so you almost essentially see the whole scene you essentially see the whole action scene, or show the director the whole action scene before you shoot it. That way nobody's surprised when you get on set. The one thing you have to understand about Chad is you have to give him options. And a lot of times you'll be wrong, but sometimes you'll be right. Sometimes he just likes options because sometimes he understands that he doesn't always think of the best option. So rather than getting stuck in one way and one thing to shoot, he's like, this is what I'm trying to portray. And then he sees what we come up with. So whether you're wardrobe, hair and makeup, or stunts, or visual effects, special effects, he'll give you a broad description of what he wants, and then on the day he'll change it to whatever he thinks it's actually going to be, because with his actors, when they come in and they change, because sometimes their intentions are different than what he thought, or they bring a different, view to the character, we all have to be ready to change for them as well. Because again, Donnie threw us a bunch of curveballs that we just had to be ready for. And it can throw some crews off because they want to know exactly what they're shooting before they shoot. But I think once we got the flow of changing with Chad and with Donnie and with Keanu and everybody, I feel like everybody just got better, and all of a sudden we had 5 different options rather than we're only shooting this one thing.
When we have these ideas for films, we've worked on chapter 2, that idea of the club scene went from the red circle to now let's do the baths in Rome, and what else could he do? He's running for his life. I think, what if he gets a horse and then starts to ride? Yeah, let's do that. And the character is still kind of running under the pressures of the high table. At the end of 3, are you pissed off? Winston shot him off a building. He's excommunicado. Chad really hooked into this idea of trying to study John Wick through the situations of other characters, and he was really drawn to the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so enter Donnie Yen as Caine, and Shamir Anderson as the tracker. We have Hiroyuki Sanada, who I worked with on 47 Ronin. He has a daughter who's working with him, and that's the incomparable Rina Sawayama. And then the antagonist of the piece, the Marquis, Bill Skarsgard. You're kind of following their stories as they're trying to get John Wick, and Caine and John Wick have a past. The tracker is kind of a younger character who's kind of outside of it, who's not an assassin, but then takes a deal to force to become an assassin, and these characters come after John, and then there's moments where we have to work together against the table. So that dynamic is a way of opening up the world. Who are these other characters that exist in this world? And then how do they interact with John, and how does John interact with them? Yeah, I mean, as soon as Derek Kolstad had these assassins come into this house to attack John Wick, and once John Wick took care of business, brought these gold coins and said, you know, I'd like to make a reservation. It was like, whoa, okay, well, what can that turn into? What is this other world? And it's been a wonderful pleasure to come up with things, you know, what are these rules? And at the base of that, too, is Chad's belief that the more kind of ceremony that we can present with the high table is good to elevate them, because we don't want to show the faces. Like, we don't want to do like, here's a table and there's 12 of them and they're all sitting like, no, you don't see them. You never see them. But I think we can all relate to the idea of them. And so it's been cool to tap into that personally and then to put it into the art and then have that as this kind of overarching thing, and then have a character seeking a kind of liberation from that. We wanted to bring the muscle cars back. They found this cool Barracuda, so now it's like smashing people, hitting people, getting on it, throwing them off with like little 180s and sending them off. And then there was the drift around the car shooting at people. Then we were doing like 3 lanes of traffic, and so there's gunfights within traffic, and then some judo, and then there's dog hits. We can talk about the dogs later, and then, or talk about the dogs. Back from chapter 3, but now painted in here in chapter 4 with Andrew, the dog master. The training went longer than 3 months, and it was 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. So it was a 2-hour morning session, lunch, 2-hour afternoon session. And for me, it's just been awesome to work with these stunt people and just have what they shared with us was the affection that they have for the John Wick films. Because John Wick action is a little different. It's a lot. Because Chad wants reality, he wants Rex, he wants it to feel real, he wants the beautiful violence. And so do we, and so do they. But all of these people have just really taken care of me. If they like John Wick, they like him because Charon likes him. And I think what Lance brought to the role of Charon, even from the beginning, I think it wasn't even rehearsal. It was like we were on the set and we were kind of there, and Lance said to Chad, I have this accent that I've always wanted to do. Chad was like, let's hear it. And so he did it, and then Chad was like, okay. And Lance was like, really? He's like, yeah. And so Charon was born. And the elegance of that performance and that person, and you know, just kind of the heart of that character. You know, you feel it when John Wick walks into the hotel lobby the first time, and he just kind of looks up. Having Ian McShane back, just such a joy to work with, and such a unique and special talent person, and getting a chance to act with him again, and then how do we develop his story, and then what organically came out of that. And it's nice to see McShane being part of Avenge and Revenge. The incredible Laurence Fishburne as the Bowery King, where I had safe harbor. And for me personally, Fish is safe harbor. He's been such a mentor to me since working on The Matrix in 1997. So it's, you know, we have a friendship, and it's cool to be working with him again. And what he brings to the Bowery King is so special. And who else could be the king? He's extraordinary in the sense of how he's grown, how he matriculates all of his inspirations and his knowledge and his practicality. So to me, he's the director. He's also got a great hand and ear for script and for production. He knows how movies get made. And here, being on chapter 4, you know, I say these John Wick films for Chad and I are like we prepare a meal. We're the chefs, and he's the head chef. I'm a sous chef, and then we find the ingredients. We're putting it together. And that partnership has been really fun and some of the best creative days for me. If you enjoy the world building of the John Wicks, then we have a lot of fun stuff in store. We have new characters, new levels of action for John Wick action, the production design, the scale, the scope, a lot of big rooms, high ceilings. We're in Berlin, we're in Paris. We have amazing thespians and costume design. There's other themes that are coming back from all of different versions of all of the films. So there's stuff that you can recognize, and then there's new things. We're trying to cook up a beautiful feast with multiple courses and some nice wine. So sit back, see it on the big screen, eat some popcorn, and John Wick.
We have the New York Continental, and then in the second one, I believe we had the Rome Continental. Then we had Morocco, John Wick 3. And now we've introduced the Osaka Continental in Japan. So we're trying to introduce this world of continentals all over the world. And each major city has its own hotel, its own look, its own design, its own style. So on this movie, we've chosen Osaka as our foreign destination. I wouldn't say so much a design look so much, but I think as far as like a personnel, each one has a manager, each one has a concierge, each one has a certain code of ethics and a unwritten set of rules that they have to follow. When I talked to Chad about, in the early beginnings, we talked about all, like, where could we go? Could we go to South America? Could we go to South Africa, St. Petersburg, Mexico City? I mean, any major metropolitan place. And we talk about it, and we're serious about, where can we go? And we settle on, we kind of talked to Keanu and everybody, and we settle on, do Osaka. I try to do that in a lot of the sets we do, even in the New York Continental. I try to mix a traditional samurai way of life, I call it, and their aesthetics and their artwork that dates back to the 1600s. And I use that as a base, as a foundation. And then I try to make it, what can we do to make it modern day, contemporary? So, for example, the exhibit room that we did a big gunfight in with glass, and I framed all these old, beautiful rice paper paintings and framed them in glass and put modern frames around them and put them all over the place, and was able to use them, that and the samurai suits. We had 8 samurai suits, I believe, and we were able to crash in them. But everything was framed in a super modern way, as a modern art gallery or modern art space would be. It comes down to Chad giving me a challenge of creating obstacle courses and what those obstacle courses could be. In John Wick 2, we had like a mirror set. John Wick 3, we had a glass structure that was all glass, floors, ceilings. So this one, we chose water. So we're going to incorporate water as a obstacle course, basically. That gives John Wick a playground of fighting bad guys that force them through this maze. And that's really what we try to create. We create an atmosphere. We tried to pick places that are completely different. So we chose this one to really kind of base out of Europe. Originally, we were going to St. Petersburg and Paris, but instead of St. Petersburg, we chose Berlin instead. So we kind of incorporated this whole kind of Berlin idea of East versus West, kind of like the idea of before the Berlin Wall kind of fell. So we kind of took a little bit of that idea of what life was like before 1989 and tried to incorporate a little bit into our film as we tell the story of John Wick passing into this place and trying to get out. We kind of took Berlin as a central second act of our film to really kind of anchor down on. But the first act, we really wanted to make it totally different than the second act. So we wanted to keep it lively and a little more sexy Japan feel. Completely different than a Berlin feel. So that's what we kind of narrowed it down to, and that's what we're excited about. The Paris portion of the film. I've never shot in Paris. I've always wanted to. I'm super excited about the architecture, the aesthetics. It's such a beautiful city.
One of the things that's so interesting about that relationship is it feels so close from the first film. Particularly Charon, it seems like he's calling the manager every other scene, but you don't really see them together until the very end of the second film. We didn't really have any scenes together until the third film. But the way the relationship plays out in the third film, it almost informs what happened before in the first two films. So you get a sense that they've been together for many, 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 many years, probably even before the Continental. It's so funny because the first time I ever met Ian was in that scene at the end of John Wick 2. So I've been a fan, but I'd never met him before. As a matter of fact, when I first met Ian at the very end of John Wick 2, I was being very weird because I was kind of tongue-tied, and he was just, hey, man, how you doing? And I was like, oh, and he was looking at me like, what's the matter with you? You okay? And that's really when we became friends. We're visited by someone called the Harbinger, who lets us know that the high table is not pleased with the fact that Winston let John Wick live. And so, in the confrontation, or rather, depending on how you want to put it, confrontation or meeting, Winston goes to meet the Marquis, who is the representative of the high table, to plead the case. Charon decides to go with him, because the truth is, both of them aren't summoned, only Winston is. And there's a moment where, right before they go into the room to meet with the Marquis, where Winston says to him, you shouldn't be here.
I think the relationship with John Wick is really quite intimate, and that they did some of their best work together, maybe, in the early days. The relationship with John is great. And then Chad said something about Winston and the Bowery King, which is that they're kind of brothers in a way. I applaud him for being able to continue to work in the action genre as hard as he does. Keanu's physicality in these movies is staggering. The amount of stamina that is required, the amount of just sheer kind of energy to do, even half of what he's required to do has got to be punishing, He said something really, really kind of telling to me, which he said, I haven't spoken in 15 weeks. I thought, he's after an Eastwood kind of vibe, Chad was always a solid guy. When I first met him at the age of 25, he was a solid cat. He was a hard worker, he was a good listener, he was a team player, and he was a leader. And he's just grown in all of those capacities. His delight in making movies as a director is the thing that I appreciate the most, and it's where we sort of meet. Obviously the action. But for me personally, I think people are going to really enjoy the fact that it is even more international than it has been in the past. When I read the script, I really, really loved all the different locations and these new characters that they've brought into the story, all those relationships, fathers and daughters. And I just thought, oh, wow, it's just the world has gotten even more outsized and more amazing. So I was just, I was just really, really happy that they asked me to come play. When I saw the first movie, which I wasn't in, I enjoyed it so much I immediately like reached out to Keanu. I was like, dude, all of our friends, all the guys that worked on the Matrix pictures, like everybody's in the movie. You gotta hook me up. He was like, we've been thinking about you. And so, you know, to get to play a character who was this regal sort of monarch, but, you know, his kingdom is sort of underneath all of this sort of like highly stylized, elegant sort of chic that's happening is really kind of, it's a nice kind of juxtaposition. So I'm having fun, man. I'm just happy to be here. We've had such a good time this time. He's got some great stories. He told some great stories the other night. And yeah, man, I mean, he's such an amazing actor. He's just so solid. And to play with somebody like that is, you know, it's always easy, man. It's great.
As a martial arts fan, as an action fan, you know, I was very familiar with John Wick franchise. When I got a call from Chad, it was a very, very magical moment for me, for my career, because it's just, you know, someone is changing the game on the industry of how to shoot action and how to shoot martial arts. For me, it was a very, very, you know, exciting moment, you know. As a true martial artist, the eyes that he has, mixed with all his experience as a filmmaker, puts him in a position where what he's seeing on that monitor, there's not a lot of people that can see. That someone that has experienced all the process through the years in the industry, and that makes it so unique. He's like a friend, you know, and it's so cool that he makes you feel so comfortable on set. He's been there, he knows exactly what you might be feeling or what's your doubts about the scene. When you're doing a dynamic scene like that with action, with movement, with speed, it's a different game, it's a different element. The way the camera needs to work, the way that maybe he's thinking of how he's gonna cut, what part of that scene of that take he's gonna use and it's gonna work. So he's focusing. So all that, it's a common language, and then you feel so safe. There's a whole prep for every fight scene. In this case, for example, that I'm a martial artist and I have experience in action, then they let me, oh, Marko, what you could do here, like try. Like, for example, Jeremy, that is his fight coordinator, he knows me already, so he knows kind of what I like, my styles, what I can do, what I can't do. So then he asked me, hey, what about this, what about that? And there's like a common like co-creation because of the character that I'm playing, maybe, this technique is not gonna fit that character as good as maybe this other technique. So then there's a little flexibility on how to put the fights in at the end for each role, each character. Well, so Chidi is the right-hand side of the Marquis. So I'm like, up there, and I'm following him. I make sure that everything is in order in this world. Chidi wants to prove the Marquis that he's losing his time. That's kind of what my character goes through the movie. Like, I'm all the time trying to make sure that things are being made. I have this feeling of like, why he just don't send me to go kill him and find him and not these guys, and losing all this time. So that's kind of that's my struggle through the movie until later, of course, because you guys are going to see that I have my choice, I have my opportunity. Myrmidons, well, they're my soldiers. They're the people that I command. I'm the boss, and this is like my army to protect the Marquis. So we make sure that everything that he wants is delivered and happens. Right now, he just want to break free, and he just want to do whatever it takes to finish and get out of this system, get out of the high table and be free. Like, what he's looking for his freedom. but he's so mixed up with past what he'd done in the past that they're not gonna let him go that easy, right? So of course he needs to do some favors, right, to some people in order to get the chance to fight for his freedom in that final duel. Being able to work with him, having the opportunity to just work with him and see how he handles the fighting, and it's very, very cool. I was very lucky to experience that. Very nice guy. So it's funny when you're in person with someone and the way he works, so professional and very nice. So, and his character is so cool. When I read the script, Donnie's character, that honor that he has, and he's fighting, but he doesn't want to kill people because that's not what he wants. He just wants to protect his daughter. So he has this conflict all the time. So that's a very cool character for him. Well, for sure, this movie is a movie to go to the theater. I know that today we have access to different ways to what, like people are watching movies in the cell phone, the streaming. But when you guys see the world that is, I know people have seen all the other John Wick, but this is just like a reloaded one. Like the action, the stunts, the colors, the cinematic, is so beautifully shot at the same time, so brutal that, when you guys see the sound work and the colors and the cinematography, this, you guys will enjoy it. And the best way to enjoy a movie like this is in the theater for sure. Like to get your popcorn, just sit and enjoy the ride, because it's going to be a wild ride.
I was very much aware of it. I watched it when it first came out. I had relatively low expectations. I did not know much about it, except I was a Keanu fan like everyone else. I sat in the theater. I watched a movie that did not have the principal speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and I was in awe. It was revelatory insofar as it reminded me that movies are about things that happen, not things that are said. So I have been very, very aware of this franchise. I have studied it quite a lot. It's a franchise that understands that the questions are more interesting than the answers, because it treats me and the viewer like an adult. It doesn't spoon feed me information. It assumes that I'm a thinking human being. And the obvious dedication to craft and the uncompromising nature of this group of filmmakers makes it very noteworthy. It was quite eye-opening and quite remarkable, and I really was not prepared for it. I come from a world where you meet with your producer, your director, for a few hours, you go home, you write a draft, you come back, you do notes. I had in Los Angeles maybe a dozen meetings with Keanu and Chad. I don't think one of them went for less than 9 hours. These guys make you raise your game, and they lead from the front. I've never seen two human beings work harder or longer on a project, and it shows. I mean, it is physically, emotionally, and mentally and possibly spiritually draining. Two things. One is not be repetitive. 2 was honor the character. 3 was honor the world. And 4 was give the audiences a little bit more. What the marching orders were from the very first meetings, it became very plain that they needed to expand this universe slightly. The 3 movies had been squarely on John Wick. And from the beginning, they knew that they wanted to create a film that showcased other characters, and through those characters, showcased the world. But they wanted to give the audience what the audience wanted, which is more. We were fascinated by Karen. We were very, very lucky to get Rina. She was absolutely fantastic. And this is a young woman who has never actually acted, to my knowledge. She owned it in dialogue, through emotion, and in action. She's a lovely character. She's also a very tragic character. We wanted to show the world on multiple temporal levels. People sort of like coming into this world, people already in this world, people at the top of their game or trying to get out of this world. She represented someone on the younger side, next generation, if you will. And we wanted to create a somewhat complicated relationship between her and her father. Her father loves her very much. She is a part of this world, but he doesn't really want her to be a part of this world. We also wanted to use her to demonstrate that once you dip your toe into this world, it will grab you and pull you in. There is no escaping this world. And that obviously was a theme It's the theme of the John Wick franchise. It's like, how do you get out? And all of us were excited about writing and creating a part for a young woman that would give us a different view into this world. In 3, we had the adjudicator. The adjudicator was an official that came to correct some wrongs, to set things right. That didn't go so well. When we meet the Marquis, he is akin to the sheriff of this world. This is a man of great ambition. He's a man of tremendous power. He's something of a sadist. He's also a very powerful spokesman for what the table is and why John Wick has to die. The interesting thing about him, for me, is that he is a villain who believes he is the hero of his own story. He is doing God's work. He's on the side of right. John Wick is on the side of wrong. You know, that's up for interpretation. I think that some of us might disagree with that. When we designed this piece, we wanted to have a view of John, essentially a timeline of John's life, and demonstrate possibilities of what could have occurred if he had made certain choices. Caine represents the choice of, if John Wick had taken the Elder's deal from 3 and killed Winston, he would have been Caine. He would have been locked into the service of the table, and he would have gone through life, and his soul would have slowly sort of collapsed, essentially, whichever word. The tracker is someone coming in from the bottom, and he has the potential to either go one way or the other. He can either follow sort of the path of Caine, he can follow the path of John, he can take his own path. He's a man who's getting in to get out. He's a guy who has sort of figured out before this movie starts that he wants out. And he's willing to do almost anything to get out, including make a deal with the table. Now, what he doesn't understand, and what Caine and John understand, is you can't make a deal with the table. The table is like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out. He is the Harbinger. He's the Harbinger of death. He's a man, when he walks in, bad things happen. You do not want the Harbinger knocking on your door. He represents the table. He sits in an odd way, like the Elder sat above the table. He is the head of the bureaucracy, in a sense, that exists regardless of leadership. The world of the table is quite ceremonial. There are rules, there are consequences, there are rituals. Chad and Keanu are always talking about the rituals. All, by the way, designed to indicate that this has been going on for a very long time. The Harbinger is a sort of representative of the history of the table. A neutral arbiter, largely, but incredibly dangerous. He comes whenever things have gone askew. This is a man who sort of institutionally rights the boat, the entire sort of body of this, and he has tremendous knowledge of the history of the table and all the players. In a weird way, he plays, he's a little bit of the devil. He tempts, he creates problems. He loves life. He's the character who most embraces the world of Wick. This is a man who absolutely opens his arms and draws it all in. And there's something so honest and open and fun and grand and large and mischievous about him that you can't help but love him. Also, you know, when Laurence Fishburne looks at the camera and smiles and that baritone comes out, it's pretty compelling. When we last left in 3, John had been shot off a roof. He'd been betrayed by Winston, and he's picked up by the Bowery King. The last lines of 3, the Bowery King asks him, "Are you mad?" And, "Oh yeah." And what John Wick does in 4 is an expression of that. 1 was the introduction of John Wick in this world. 2 was the consequences of re-entering. 3 was John Wick being hunted for making a moral choice. Now, the moral choice involved violence, but he did what he and we believe is the right thing. And for that, he was hunted. He was on his heels the entire piece. We wanted in 4 to flip the paradigm and have the Baba Yaga go after the table. Essentially, 4 is the story of John saying, "I am not going to run anymore." So instead of running from the table, he turns around and runs at them. And we start to understand actually why people are so afraid of John Wick. Keanu has the courage to not speak. In a world where we're bombarded with noise, with information, he has perfected a look, a posture, a stance that is incredibly powerful, and he is not afraid of long, uncomfortable silences. And I think that right there is, for me, the single most sort of interesting thing about him. Then, of course, obviously he's a trained, very fine actor. He can deliver lines. But one thing about him is his work ethic. This is a man who will train a year on this. I mean, people don't know this. These amazing stunts, these incredible sort of action sequences, these incredible driving sequences. You think, and you would probably be right in most instances, to think that those are stunt guys. Most of that is Keanu, and they're hard. I mean, these sequences he puts together and Chad puts together for him, these don't just happen. These are months and months and years of training go into them.
Because of John Wick's actions, my dad's been killed, and I have taken the mantle, and I'm now kind of the queen of the Romas. And I found it very interesting, actually, because I started studying a lot about Roma culture before I started this job, and it's a very patriarchal society. So to kind of be the alpha of that and a woman, yeah, she's got a big set of ovaries, basically, and she, knows how to wield her power. I think they are both such lovely men. I met Chad over Zoom, and he was like, Nat, I've had your picture on my wall for ages. And I was like, he just seemed so lovely. And I was like, okay. And then I ended, and I was like, was that an audition? I don't know if that was an audition. Okay. And then I had another Zoom conversation when I was like, obviously I'm in to do this kind of franchise. It's amazing. And again, he was just so lovely. And once I arrived, he took me everywhere. He welcomed me. Both of them welcomed me so warmly into the John Wick family. He showed me the dogs, the stunt rooms, the studios, and then we sat down and we discussed it and read through it with the writer. And I think we kind of got to a bit of an idea of the tone of how things were going to be. I think the way Chad works is like, right, this time, try and do the whole take in one way, rather than like modulating it as you go. He'll be like, right, this one, very, very serious. This one kind of jokey and funny. And I kind of quite like it because you can stay on kind of one level as an actor for one take, and you're like, right, that's what I'm doing. Okay. I felt very powerful. It felt very, but at the same time, even though I felt powerful, one of the notes that Chad gave me is that she's actually, the scene is actually her kind of flitting between being a leader and a daughter. So and also it's, even though he's on trial, he said something to me that's very interesting, that actually she's on trial because this is her first big decision as alpha after her dad's died. And so that's why, I hope it translates, but I'm trying to look at everyone's reactions a lot. I hope that makes it into the edit. Just kind of gauging, okay, am I going to lose power? Am I going to lose face in this situation? So it felt bad, but at the same time it felt actually, I felt as a character that I was a bit scared as well, because I can't get this wrong in front of my crew. He's coming over because he needs to get a crest from the family to be invited back into the family clan, so we can support his challenge to the Marquis. I really love the stunt dogs. I went to meet them. They are amazing. I did not know that because I asked them, I saw John Wick 3 and I was like, those dogs are literally incredible. And they told me, the way they do it is with this kind of neon green kind of bit that they put on them. So that's what on set we're not allowed to wear green, because they've literally been trained to attack neon green. Yeah, oh, he's lovely. I've only met him like a couple of times and kind of hung out with him a bit, but his look is fantastic. His face tattoos and his hair, and he's got a very big presence. That's what I liked. I immediately liked the way that Chad does stuff. He's like, right, that character, that this guy should play it, or this woman should play it, and that kind of just confidence that you'll do the job well, rather than having to go through a very long, arduous audition process. He was like, I know that you have to be this person, and he did the same with Fen. So, thank you, Chad.
Well, I think one of the early things that Chad was saying is he wanted him to have a feeling of almost these sort of like 70s actors like Jean-Paul Belmondo, and it was always like this sort of like feeling a little bit, Also, I think, he wanted to bring sets and life into because, basically, John is always dressed in black or really, really dark shades. And, we wanted to bring a sort of like light into it. And we have found this material that is a fabric that is supposed to have some sort of like diamond particles inside. And then it makes a little bit like, to have a certain shine. And I thought that was quite interesting. And then we have brought this to the movie. Also, the other thing that Chad always mentioned a little bit is that the movie had to work in a way almost like a Western perhaps even like an spaghetti western. And then, I mean, even you maybe you don't see that, it has been always behind my mind when I have been designing the clothes of John Wick, obviously, and other characters as well. In the case of Donnie, I try more to fix his designs in what he is, what his physicality, and try to bring that together. Because at the end, they are wearing both of them a black suit. But they are, I mean, you can see that they are very different somehow. And then it's so like it's a work, or we say the line of the design has been working in this sort of like in subtle things, like, maybe the length of the lapels and the width of the ties, and, more than trying to make two characters that they look really, really different. I think the work we have tried to do is actually quite the opposite, to make them look like they are almost the same. Because that's the, I mean, they are like, father and son, or brother and brother in a way, and they fight each other, but not because they want to. I've been in Japan working, and my first impression of the country was how similar to us in a way. They are like very similar to the countries in the West, but at the same time they still keep their own traditions and their own singularities. And then I just thought it was a big opportunity in Shimazu's world to try to put together these two ideas. That's the reason he wears like a westernized clothes, but then on top of that, instead of wearing like a Western jacket for a suit, he wears like a haori, that is a traditional Japanese garment. And from the very beginning, he liked the idea. The actor liked the idea, and it was good. I mean, and also, I mean, his haori, we designed it from ideas of Japanese painting. If you look at the design, it's like a sea that almost is like about to be in a storm, or, and I just thought, it's a little bit like. Just like, pre-seeing what is going to happen. I thought that the metaphor of a storm in the sea was like quite good for that. Yes, modern and traditional at the same time, because she wears like an idea of a kimono. And looking at Japanese designers, I mean, is a designer that I really admire, that is Miyake, and he works with pleats. That he has brought like pleats back to fashion, and I just, we just wanted to do that. But also it came because Chad showed me a picture of a lady with a sort of like a veil that it looked like the sky with clouds in movement, and then we decided to sort of like make a design of this sort of like abstract sky, and then we decided what happened if we pleat it, and then we pleat it, and we thought, well, this looks like really interesting because it looks really like Miyake, and then why don't we do like a contemporary kimono? And then, one thing came to another. And then obviously she needs to be a fighter as well. Then, we came up with this idea of having her in this leather and stretch material, sort of like bodysuit, but also feminine with a little bit of a skirting. That was entirely Chad. Chad from the very beginning had a very, very clear idea that he wanted them to be in these suits with short legs and with boots. And I mean, to be honest, I had, I have chosen obviously the fabrics and the shape of the jackets and everything, but the primary idea was coming from Chad. He wanted that, and I think it worked quite well. You know, especially because also the people who are playing it, they are very imposing physically. You know, they are like really, really, really tall guys with a, you know, with a really sort of like a really, really important physical presence. Well, I mean, the thing is, he is a very stylish. He has a very stylish vision of movies. I always thought it was really amazing how he does these John Wick movies, because it's almost like a choreography of action, almost like it brings like a sort of like a ballet feeling to it, and I think that's really, really, really interesting. And obviously, for him, you can see, and I mean, you know, I mean, I hope that the audiences can feel it. But me working for him, I know how important his costumes for him is, and that's really invaluable working with a director where you know that thinks that costumes are a very, very important point to explain the story of the movie.
I'm a huge fan of action movies in general, so I had seen John Wick. I hadn't seen John Wick 3, I had seen the first two. So when I got the casting call for this, I quickly watched John Wick 3 and it was amazing. I don't know the technicalities of action, so I learned a lot of that when I came here to train. But yeah, I was so amazed by the cinematography, and it was just so beautifully shot, and I loved the universe that they were creating. When I watched 3, I was amazed by the action sequence in Casablanca because it involved dogs, and I have a dog, and she would never listen to me. She hardly sits for me, so I can't imagine how they managed to do that. I'm just impressed by how the action is captured more than anything else, I think, and just the flow of the camera movements going alongside, and it all feels very natural. You feel really part of the action. It's not relying on camera shake and too much. It's really relying on the performance of the actors, so that always struck me. Well, I mean, the honest truth is this was a very big surprise to me, the casting. I am a musician and I have music videos, and I've always loved acting. So I've acted in my music videos, and I co-direct my music videos, and I create dialogue. And I've even done a small fight scene in my music video called Bad Friend, which I really, really enjoyed. And I was thinking, oh, it'd be so cool if I can do action. It'd be amazing. And then I got a call from Chad, the director, and he wanted to speak to me. And he pretty much said, here is how it is. It's really hard training. You're gonna have to keep up with Keanu and me. You know, I do really long takes, and are you up for it? Are you free the next couple months? And amazingly, I had a gap in my schedule. I haven't for the last 2 years, but I think it was just meant to be because I did. And so I left a couple of days later, and I was in Berlin training. I met Keanu in the gym when we first started training. So I was training for about 5 weeks before we started filming. And yeah, we were in the gym every single day. And I know that Keanu had been there for weeks or months before I had been there. So yeah, it was crazy. I was just training just a little bit far away from him every single day. And he's so nice. It's like true what they say. He's so humble, so lovely, so down to earth, very zen, like very, you know, peaceful. And yeah, he was just gave me really, really good advice on how to get through the action sequences, because he was like, it's no joke. So yeah, it was great. This being my first role, I was very much thinking about when is it gonna click in. I've been practicing, I've been doing a lot of work on the acting side. When is it gonna sink in? And it's when I walked in to the lobby, and that's when it sunk in. And I think that takes amazing production design to be able to put you in that universe straight away, and you're not seeing the cracks, and you're just seeing incredible lighting design, as well as production design. And yeah, I mean, it was the lobby of a hotel in ICC, which is already an incredible building. And I feel so honored to be able to be in this historic building. I love brutalist architecture and stuff, so this stuff is incredible to me, and it's so fitting, weirdly, in middle of Europe to have a Japanese hotel recreated. And not just the lobby, the corridors with the bamboo, and the roof garden is beautiful as well. And I just think it's just flawless, beautiful. Hero, Mr. Sanada, is a wonderful person. He's an amazing actor. He would take the times that even if he wasn't working to coach me and to practice with me. After he flew in from LA, he read the script with me every single day. And he said, you know, if you want to do that, let me know. And so we did it. And he was so open and so kind and generous with his time. And the scene of us walking through the lobby together was one of my favorite scenes because we rehearsed it so many times. And after every take, he would be like, you know, maybe a little bit more of this. And it was just so fun. I don't know what I'd do without him, honestly. Donnie, It Man. I can't believe like someone can move that fast, basically. And actually watching him on set, and I was like, yeah, surely it's sped up. Come on, it's all the movies are sped up that I've seen him do. But it's not. I mean, he's so fast. He's insanely fast. He kicks so high and he slides and he does all this crazy stuff. And him as a person, he's so funny, so easygoing, so generous as well. He's very curious about other people. And downstairs in the seating area outside, we would often just, you know, have lunch together and talk, and I'd ask him advice on things. And he's just so legendary, and it's insane that he's also in this movie. It's just like, just the number of amazing actors in this movie, I can't even handle it. I am so bewildered still. I'm really a deer in headlights. Every single day I come on set, I have plunged myself into the deep end of action. I didn't know that. Chad did warn me, but I didn't really know it. And I have really plunged myself into the most incredible actors. And so I was, from the beginning, I need to step in. I can't take anything for granted. I need to absorb. I need to rest so I know what I'm doing. And I'm unbelievably lucky that this is my first film because the people around me are so generous. Keanu, Hero, Donnie, Shamir, just been so sweet and just talking me through all the action scenes and any questions that I have about things. Or I'll be like, why did you do that? And then they'll tell me. So it's been amazing. Chad is such a chilled out director. It's crazy considering how much he has to do. The only time I've heard him yell is when he yells action and cut. And Chad, because of his stunt background, he knows what he's doing. So he'll usually show me what he wants me to do. Like he'll be doing the knee slides, and he is very, very encouraging and very gentle with his direction and things. And he, luckily for me, explains why he's saying those things. So he'd be like, okay, because the camera's getting it this way, so you need to make sure that your face is this way and this. And I was like, oh, okay, got ya. He knows what he wants, and he's very clear in what he wants, but he tells it in a very gentle way. So I really, really appreciate that about him. It's got emotion. It's got so many action greats. Donnie, Hero, Scott Adkins, Marko. And I think there's some kookiness that comes from Shamir's character, the tracker, Bill as well. And you've got the old favorites of the Continental in New York. And I think it's like the old meets the new. And I think that there is an emotional intensity and breadth that I hope people are able to feel.
I've known Chad for quite some time. I've worked with him as a second unit director on a couple of action films. Someone I've always looked up to, and he's done so much in his life as a stuntman, as a stunt coordinator, as a director now, and the business of 8711. And he phoned me up, I guess it was October, and he said, I'm thinking about writing a role for you in John Wick 4. Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, of course I am. I got very excited. And I didn't hear from him for ages. And, he's not the best at returning texts. So I'm thinking, am I still going to be in that movie? And what is the part? I didn't know anything. And so eventually he phones me up again 6 months later and says, right, I've got the sides for the part, but I'm not going to send it to you. I want to talk you through it. For guys like me that have come up through the world of stunts and martial arts, he's someone that you look up to. you know, for all the work that he's done as a stuntman. The fact that he's one of the best martial artists I've ever met. I mean, he's proficient in so many different styles of martial arts. Like, you literally cannot believe it. He can do everything. And it's amazing when he starts, you know, showing you how to do it on the set, and people are like, wow, he really does know his stuff. The whole world of John Wick is just great. It's like almost in some sort of alternate universe. It's real life on steroids. And you've got all these colourful characters. And what amazes me about the John Wick movies is, obviously the action is second to none, but it's the cinematography and the set design. I mean, everything looks just, it's beautiful to look at. He is the head of the German table. He is connected to John Wick in a very personal way because my character killed basically his father figure. Petter has died by my hand, so it's very personal, the relationship between me and John Wick. And I certainly rub that in and have a lot of fun doing so. He definitely likes the sound of his own voice, and he's pretty pompous and arrogant. Well, I've had various card coaches because I started off in America. I was doing another film, so I got myself some cards. I was looking at stuff on YouTube, just trying to figure out some nifty things to do, not really knowing what was going to be expected of me. And then when I got back to England, I had a magician show me some of his tricks, which was the one that we ended up using, was to flick the card and to catch it. And then when I got here, I had a great coach, another magician that was just, we kept it pretty simple in the end, just efficient dealing rather than card flourishes, you know, to show that he's very good with the cards. Obviously was essential to the character. Keanu he lives up to everything you've heard about him. Obviously, he's just such a nice guy. I remember coming to the set and he was doing action, you know, fighting all day, and he decides to offer me his seat. I'm like, you're here fighting all night, you take the seat, Keanu, I'm just visiting for 1 hour. It'll be fine. That's the kind of guy he is, right? He's just such a nice guy. And I think one of the reasons that John Wick works so much is because he's this badass assassin, but when that guy is inhabited by Keanu, he's just so likable to watch. You can't help but root for the guy. He just, you know, he could play Ted Bundy and you're going to root for him. Donnie Yen is a legend of action cinema. He's one of the greats, one of the best to ever do it. I had the fortune of working with him once before on Ip Man 4, and I was the bad guy in that, and he gave me a real good kicking, which my character greatly deserved. And it's just a pleasure to work with somebody like that. You're working with people at the top of the game. For me, I do a lot of action films. That's my thing. That's what I'm known for. But if you get to do action in a John Wick movie, that's the highest accolade. This is where it's at right now. In terms of action, there is no better action movie franchise being made at this present time better than John Wick. And now we're adding to that Donnie Yen. And Shamir Anderson, who's no slouch himself, he's bringing the action in this. But Donnie, of course, it goes without saying that he's one of the greatest to ever do it.
John Wick fights are known for Keanu doing most of it, and for being long takes and big wide lenses, and it has a very specific style. And I wanted to honor that style. I didn't want it to become this cutty, edity, shaky cam, something suddenly different. I wanted to really live in that John Wick world. And to do that, you had to have Keanu Reeves doing the stuff. I mean, I love working with Chad because he wants to do it. It's not that, he just wants to do it cool. He wants to see something that he would want to go to the movies and see. My job is just to bring him as much stuff as I can. And, at one point we had lots of fire involved, and we were going to do this whole other thing. And, and it's just an evolution. And to figure out how to stitch it all together, and, to do marry the choreography with the camera move and the timing and the fire and the dog, and I mean, at one point we get, as you see, as we all see in the movie, there's a guy on fire that ends with a shot with a dog, and he gets a shot, and then it's just, you're just like, wow. When at the end of that take, I was like, wow, there's a lot happening in that thing. I had the distinct pleasure of doing 3 movies in a row with Mr. Reeves. So, and me being of similar age, I think we kind of can relate in that, that aspect of it and the physical toll that it takes on him. And it's impressive. We had to create a sequence where we tore all the doors off and lost the windshield, and couldn't just get in a car with no doors and no windshield. So we created a sequence to tell that story. And I was like, yeah, they're gonna shoot at him, and I want him to drop down below the, the firewall and behind the dashboard and drive and slide the car, kind of pitch it, slide it sideways, and maybe hit some guys with a car. And he goes, oh, it'd be cool if he reached down and picked up the gun. And I was like, can we do that? And so, him and I worked it out with him doing it first. And all the different, we had to give, a way to see where the gun was, and one wheel had to go over the gun, and we put it all together and figured out that it was possible. And then we told Keanu, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and then you're gonna pick up a gun. And he was kind of like, what? And, so every training session would either start with or end with him working on that part. You had to figure out how to get him there, get him just emotionally, physically, mentally, get him prepared to do this thing. And then, how do you protect them? You have to stop them above the ground, and Keanu's character keeps falling, so you don't have them on stage where people are right next to them. They're out in the middle between these 2 buildings. You can't get to them. And so you had to design it all that puts their bodies in the right position, and you had to protect them.
I think there's a lot of elements that hook people. I think, obviously the lead, Keanu Reeves, who's such a legend, people are familiar with him. But also it's a great story. It's super simple, It's a man seeking redemption, who lost his wife and lost his puppy. And I think there's so much heart to that. And then as humans, we're so primal. So I think, we enjoy seeing John Wick wreak havoc, because I feel like deep down inside humans, we can't do those things in real life. So we like to watch and fantasize about it. So I think that's why we love John Wick. And also it's just, who doesn't love a good entertainment, action, jam-packed movie? I actually worked with Chad on another film that Halle Berry was directing called Bruised, and Chad was helping out on that film with Halle. Obviously, Halle did the 3rd John Wick and worked with Chad. So it was a brief interaction. I didn't really, know him that well at the time. We didn't really, communicate that much, more so action cut type of thing. And for whatever reason, he saw the work that I did on that, and there was the opening for the part of Tracker, and so he called me. And I still think there's a residual, of course, of the first movie, that redemption story, that revenge, but this movie has introduced a lot of new characters, a lot of new faces, a lot of new people. Tracker's in Tracker's world. Tracker doesn't care less what other characters are doing or what's happening in the world. Tracker's on his mission, and his mission is John Wick, similar to others. But Tracker's been doing this. He's a professional tracker. And in my backstory and in my development of this character, I said to Chad, I pitched to him, I said, what if this guy's been tracking him since the first John Wick? What if he's studying the John Wick movies almost as a documentary? And so that's kind of something that I've implemented in my idea of Tracker, because this man's a lone ranger, and so for him, it's just like one target, John Wick, and then on to the next. The Western element was actually built in, that was something that they specifically did, and I picked up on it, obviously. You can't ignore his old pistol. We won't get into the gun jargon, but, he definitely had, we'll call it the Western-style pistol, which was modified a little bit. But that was just, that went to show, just that showed the side of him of just his object affinity and just really loving what he loves. And he's a very tactile character, from his notebook to his guns, to his dog, to his clothing. He's a very particular human. Paco is such an incredible collaborator, and he's very poetic in his approach, you know, from the images that he uses. Building this character's wardrobe, you know, I brought in my binder and was just showing the team, Chad, different color palettes, different, you know, textures. We didn't have really an idea for this guy, you know. We went through a variation of character choices, from leather pants at one point to maybe a fedora. And it took some time. I had a few wardrobe fittings until we found that thing. And that thing is what you see on this screen. And just making sure that for me, having history with everything that he was wearing, down to his gloves, down to his scarf, down to his rings, down to the nail polish, like everything had, you know, purpose. It wasn't just thrown on because it was aesthetically appealing. One moment in time, we're actually on set, and he turned over and he said, "Mr. Anderson," because my last name's Anderson. And so I just stopped him for a second. I said, dude, you just can't do that, man. I'm like, "Mr. Anderson." I'm like, "Stop, Keanu. I got butterflies. I'm blushing. This is a moment for me right now. You got to stop." And that was definitely a bucket list moment, having Keanu Reeves call me Mr. Anderson. Kind of getting goosebumps saying it now. I was thrown into training right away with the 8711 gang, from jiu-jitsu, judo, boxing, Muay Thai, fitness, and on top of that, dog training. And that was every day from 9 to 5. It was definitely a process. But thankfully for me, I am a physical person. I would consider a fit person, so it wasn't that bad. But I feel like it doesn't matter if you're a Navy SEAL, like that training is next level. But what I love about it is everybody's so passionate. I had to understand the dog's energy, but most importantly, build a relationship, because Tracker, you know, he has the dog in this movie, and that dog and him obviously had a past. So for me, I spent literal hours with the dog. Sometimes we would just sit there, sometimes take the dog for a walk. You know, sometimes I would and I did a whole video with the dog, pictures. That was probably the most time I've spent working with animals in my entire career. And it was definitely a pleasant process, and I will definitely be getting a dog after this movie's done. How thrilling, how exciting, edge of your seat experience that I had being on this movie. And, you know, hopefully the built-in fan base are happy with what we've been doing, and then finding new fans.
I think what Chad brought to like Western cinema in terms of pre-vising action and that new approach to action. Chad is literally one of the greatest choreographers of our generation, and he revolutionized. He was there for the Matrixes and everything like that. He got to see that forefront of that change from the Hong Kong style, from the Western kind of old school ballroomy brawl fights and everything like that. And he was part of transitioning that change to a more realistic fight approach to Western cinema, which really enhanced, you know, Western cinema. No, I mean, I knew what was coming in. Like, being part of the 8711, you know, family means that you're in training. Like, Chad is the first one in. And, I mean, Chad, for all that he's done, is directing movies, but he's still in every morning teaching when he's in town. And teaches people judo, teaches people Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's the first one into the gym in the morning. His uncompromising approach, you know, and his dedication to his art, to what he does, shows off in the movies. That is John Wick. So when you're on a John Wick film, you give 100%. You know, you're there from dawn till dusk, and you're getting it right, because everything we do has to be right, you know? I mean, we're very lucky with Keanu and what he brings to the table. This is the 4th John Wick film, so way back in the day, going back to the first John Wick, that style of martial arts and John Wick choreography, we were training Keanu up in that. So now we're in the 4th iteration. It has evolved, but we still have the basis going back to the team, our stunt team that did the first John Wick film, and the second John Wick film, and the 3rd John Wick. We've built up those layers of choreography with Keanu, and Keanu's dedication. He's one of the first ones in, one of the last ones out. You know, he will come in, blood, sweat, and tears, like leaves it on the mat every day. You know, I'm sure you've seen it. We'll probably cut to some footage, but he is dedicated to that role, and he lives and breathes that role when he's doing it. He embodies John Wick when he's there, and his uncompromising vision too, and his dedication to training means that it means a lot for us, because we can train him in a style, and then on the day when things change, we know that he has the ability to do those moves and adapt to that style, because we're constantly teaching him different levels of choreography. Getting to work with Scott Adkins again was phenomenal. He's just such a wonderful character, a person to be around, and what he brought to that character was phenomenal. He brought so much life and so much interest to that character. It was very cool, and getting to see him perform in that was a lot of fun. Getting to work with Hiroyuki Sanada was such an honor as well. The refinedness and honor that he brought to that role, you know, for the Osaka Continental, really brought that whole sequence to life for me. And that sense of like Japanese honor, and through that whole sequence and his interaction with Rina as Akira, it was to see their relationship both on and off screen was phenomenal. Our whole scene in the bamboo shrine was, you know, just standing there just going, wow, it's very cool.